Well, welcome, Ben and David. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Ali, and nice to be with you, David.
Yeah, welcome, and looking forward to a good conversation.
Thank you. Well, Ben, I might start with you and obviously start at the most obvious point of the conversation. Would you mind sharing with us a little bit about the work of Baptist Care, who they are and what they do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as our name suggests, Baptist Care, we are an organisation that has its roots in the Baptist tradition, and an organisation that's very focused on care and what that means to us, which would be maybe good in the course of this conversation now to talk a little bit in more detail. But we're an organisation that's been around since 1944, so we have quite a long tradition and history, over 75 years now, and a diverse range of services that we provide as well. So we do provide in the space of the traditional aged care market across residential aged care and home care, and also in the retirement living space. In recent years, we've really grown in the housing space, community housing, social housing and affordable housing for both seniors and individuals as well. And that sort of tailors into a really diverse range of services that we provide in what we call the community services area of our business. And that ranges from things, supporting women and children impacted by domestic violence, people experiencing homelessness, people in financial distress. So it's a real strong focus in our organisation to live out that purpose in supporting individuals who may be marginalised and communities that may be disadvantaged as well. So, we're quite passionate about what we do, and it always comes from a place of heart.
Thank you for sharing. Well, as we all know, brand is really critical to all companies and their success, and Baptist Care has undergone some significant initiatives in this space over recent years. Can you share some of these with us?
It actually all started about 6 years ago, Ben, is that right? Or am I miscounting?
It's really stretching out now, David. I think we're talking about 8 now.
So it started in its current iteration, even though the company started in 44. 8 years ago, we realised, the CEO realised, and the marketing team realised that Baptist Community Services probably wasn't the best description, and that was our brand name at the time, for the services that Ben has just been outlining. So the CEO, Ross Lowe, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year, basically called me into his office and said, "David, I've got a job for you." I was an outside marketing sales consultant. He said, "I want to bring marketing into Baptist Community Services." And I said, "Yeah, well, that's a good idea." He and I had worked in marketing together for 20 or 30 years. And he knew that I had a particular passion for branding across both fast-moving consumer goods organizations, pharmaceutical organizations, but most recently, not-for-profit organizations who perhaps did not appreciate the power of brand as much as they could do. So the project started, and it was massive. And we were given a budget that blew our minds, which was probably twice as big as any marketing budget that had been given to anybody in the history of Baptist Community Services New South Wales and ACT, as it was known for in short. So we basically went through a comprehensive key stakeholder consultation, analysis, and long story short, we rebranded to Baptist Care. We looked at the logo, we looked at our colours, we looked at our copy lines, we looked at our promises and our reasons for being, and all of that got rejigged, reworked, presented to the company management, presented to the board, presented to the various Baptist care organisations, and was universally endorsed and implemented, as we said a few years ago. So we got the basis right. But even after all that work, Ben, the journey had barely begun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to build on what David's saying, I mean, it has been an incredible journey. The last few years, there's been some further thinking in the organisation around what it means when we say care. I think that's particularly, really pertinent for us in the retirement living space. And a subtle but a really important shift in our positioning. So moving away from the idea of care being a thing that we do, and of course we do support people, and there's some real practical and really valuable services that our organisation provides. But more importantly, what was at the heart of our brand and what we were seeking to communicate to our customers was that care is really an attitude that we have. It's a way that we show up and turn up, and that's very consistent across the range of services that we do, between, from domestic violence to retirement living to residential aged care. It's very a unique set of customer needs in each one of those segments. But that one consistency that sits there and really comes through in the Baptist Care communication of who we are is that we always show up and live out our values and ensure that we can deliver on the needs of the person that we're engaging with.
Fantastic. And we've certainly seen, David, to your point, I guess the not-for-profit market sector really changing in this space, haven't we, in regards to, brand awareness and the importance of it, particularly in the retirement living sector over the last couple of years.
I think the second most important part of the change was the recognition across the company of the importance of customer. There was a meeting that I will never forget in a large boardroom with 25 Baptist Care, as they then were, executives doing planning. It was one of these long one-day sessions, and everybody was there. The CEO was there, the general managers were there. And by 4 o'clock, I couldn't contain myself anymore, so I put my hand up. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, do you realise that we've been talking about our future, our organisation, our vision, our values? Do you realise we haven't used the word customer once?
Wow.
And the CEO woke up and looked at me and said, gosh, yes, you're right. And that marks, if you like, a turning point of awareness, whereby everything that we did around the brand, across our promotional collateral, was focused and researched and customer focused based consistently. And that was a very, very big step for a not-for-profit organisation. We went from providing something that we thought was good, and in many cases it was, in some cases it wasn't, to providing something that the customer wanted, had expressed a desire for. And that was a real culture corner, I think, in terms of Baptist Care's attitude to the marketplace.
Let's change direction slightly and talk about corporate values. How important are corporate values in an organisation like Baptist Care, and how do you see that this plays out when you're choosing partners to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the values are everything. And of course, it's probably something that we hear a lot now in businesses around, we need to ensure that we're living our values and do they express what we're about as an organisation. And my experience with Baptist Care is that that's a super genuine component of who we are. And when we engage with partners and we engage with people outside of our business, it's actually one of the first things that we hear from them when they interact with us, which is, wow, it's a really tangible experience of this organisation, that those things that are up there on the wall aren't really just there on the wall. They're really expressed in the way that you communicate, the way that you think, the way that you plan, the way you engage, and so on. So that's obviously then super important for us when we think about who we partner with, because partnerships are obviously about bringing someone in who understands you as much as you need to understand them. And so ensuring that, the organizations or the teams or the individuals that you are connecting with really do represent that, live that, and endorse those values. So, certainly for Baptist Care, it's central to who we are.
Wonderful.
It was very nice when we did all that early consultation and in interviews. We actually went back to the 1944 material, the 1944 values and purpose and mission. And it was amazing that all these years later, 75th anniversary coming up, that the values actually hadn't changed. The values were so grounded in this organisation. They were lived values. The only thing that had changed was the expression of them. So what had been once a 7-word pithy mission statement had turned into a 27-word verse with 5-syllable words in it that nobody really could get their mind around. So we drifted, and the joy of it is we brought it back, we honed it, and the values are absolutely embedded and expressed. But they're not any smart marketing guys' values, they're the people's values, they're our customers' values, they're the organization's values.
And I think even for us who are currently partnering with you, we certainly feel that and sense that with Baptist Care. Well, the value of teamwork is revered, and many organisations fail to choose not to consider opportunities outside of their own internal team. And David, again, you've touched on this. We know that Baptist Care initially found this quite difficult as well. But now that you have let the inside out, and you're probably one of the first let in, what would you say has been the experience for Baptist Care?
One of the good things about the way we approach projects is that we're quite honest in terms of our competency assessment before we start. So we knew we had gaps, we knew we had weaknesses, particularly around sales expertise and experience. And what we were doing with sales, particularly on a major project which is called Gracewood, started off pretty much 3 out of 10 in terms of competency and professionalism, and most importantly in terms of recognizing the agreed brand values that were in place in the rest of the organization. So we had a somewhat maverick approach to the first year of sales and marketing. And again, I got tapped on the shoulder by the CEO, Ross Lowe, back into his office. Okay, Dave, you guys have done a good job on the brand, but why is Gracewood struggling? Could you please go and fix it? I love these 2-word briefs. And basically, Marcoms, Ben, myself, and others put projects together to bring into the organization that which we did not have. And marketability has got strengths and experiences and people who could really come to us and help us achieve what we wanted. Now, we looked at a number of organizations, and some of them we would not work with a barge pole. They just did not fit with us. They did not fit with the values. But I'm absolutely delighted to say all these years later, and you can buy me a glass of something later, that marketability absolutely contributed to Baptist Care consistently with values and consistently with expertise and excellence. And a sales marketing scenario went from a 2 out of 10 to, quite frankly, a 9 out of 10.
Well, that's very kind of you to say thank you. And how long has that relationship been? It's been for 14 years now, hasn't it? If I'm correct.
For the organisation, 14, but for Ben and myself, not quite as long as that, just a mere 8 or so.
Still a good period of time.
Is that
very
right?
kind? Thank you, David.
Well, open communication really is the backbone of any effective partnership. Ben, maybe you'd like to touch on this. What has that meant for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably go to, the thought that anyone can communicate, and we'll talk a lot about communication, the need for it to be important and so on, but do we have a shared sense of why? Like, what's the purpose of the communication? I think, an effective partnership ultimately really needs to be founded on the idea of partnership, which means, a deepened appreciation of the shared goals, in terms of what David was talking about around brand. Then, these are never isolated projects. We're always collaborating in the context of a bigger picture. And it's an understanding of those goals, that strategy, that then I think leads to ways of working, and a shared and deepened appreciation of the individuals you're working with, what makes them tick, and so on. So I do think there's a deeper sense here of, communication being grounded in this idea of what we're working on together, and understanding that. And then, of course, you need to have the right governance frameworks and structures around how we gather. And I think over time, working with marketability, we really found that we did get to a place, and we're at a place now where we've got a really good humming sort of strategy in the way that we communicate and connect, whether it's around reporting, whether it's around having the right timely whips and so on. So but I think more than it being just around let's put in place the frameworks, it's really coming back and saying, okay, what are our shared goals? What are we seeking to achieve together, aligning there, and then things build up from there.
David, can you maybe add a little bit to what you think the secret ingredient of, I guess, that partnership or our partnership has been?
I think in any complex project, and most of the projects are very complex, whether from regulatory, customer, site, design, whatever, there has got to be a coming together around one table somewhere in the organization of all the facets that contribute to that. In terms of construction, we have project planning committees. In terms of sales and market, we not only sit on that committee, but we also have our own project sales and marketing scenarios. So there is a table that has met every single month for all these years to review all the aspects around the project from a particular sales and marketing focus. That needed a couple of other things. And one of the things it needed power. And because this project was briefed from the CEO to me, he gave me his gun. And I never used it. It was always in the holster, but I knew it was there if I should ever need it. And perhaps more importantly, a few other people knew that as well. So the committee was delegated power to perform. And that was really important. I think the other thing that's essential is somebody somewhere in the organization has got to be responsible. And in my book, that means one person. So I think the creation of the role that supervises all aspects, internal and external, really facilitates brand implementation and execution. That, of course, has to be handed on internally. And I think the handing on of that and the development of competency within the organization has been another remarkable outcome of the success. I would posit that perhaps today, Baptist Care's marketing capability is equal to Marketability's marketing capability. And out of that, you've got a team of two or more really coming together from slightly different directions, one goal, one team, one great result.
Really well explained. Thank you. Well, we've all gone through a few lockdowns in the last couple of years, 2020, 2021. What would you say have been some of the key lessons learned for Baptist Care, particularly around sales and marketing?
I think I'll go if you like. Internally, I sort of go there first, and the need for team. I think as humans, we've all experienced this in a very unique way. And certainly the sales and marketing doesn't happen without team, doesn't happen without people. So when the chips have been down, who can you turn to? So for Baptist Care, I think, our organizational culture, the team environments that we've invested in have certainly been critical for us in this last year. And the lessons learned for me out of this, I think, will be that investment is really important to be able to have that and to rely on that, to have a really strong and functioning sales and marketing function and team. I think externally, when I look at our investment in brand, I think that's been a really important element for us, and a lesson that we've learned that, we've typically thought about, our marketing investment at a sales level being a sort of 3 to 6 month immediate return, and our investment in brand, something that we're seeing a return in over 5 to 10 years. But also I'd say a lesson learned in this is that, in troublesome times, in periods like this, you really are relying on brand. You really are relying on an organization, reputation. You're relying on your people, and your people really are your brand. So for us as an organization, we do invest a lot in our people and as our ambassadors and those that represent us. So yeah, I think it's been an interesting lesson to learn that there needs to be a strategy that accounts for not just driving sales and outcomes in the short term, but also investing and planning for the future as well.
Well explained.
I think COVID has forced a learning curve onto us much quicker or much faster than would have otherwise occurred. I mean, apart from knowing the hands up, hands down button and where it's located on the screen, I think we've all learned that constant connection with good communication, visual and verbal, both internally and externally, really works well. And I've been really impressed how the project teams, customer contacts have all been pursued consistently through electronic communication. So we've learned lessons in terms of how to communicate. And I think they've been very, very good lessons for the brand. And the brand has been able to do that. The qualities of the brand are still there, whether it's face-to-face or electronic communication. And even though it is frustrating, and for some people there are horrendous personal stories because of COVID, I think it has actually had one or two positives for sales and marketing.
Totally agree with you. Well, I was reading a question posted to a journal the other day which read, in times of stress, will your partners stay the course, cut and run, or will they bring the litigators to sue everyone? And I had to have a bit of a laugh about that. But what would you say on our current projects? We've had multiple stress points with the project that we're all working together on at the moment. What would you say your experience has been with this?
We have a contractual relationship, but we also have a relational relationship. And the balance of those two is so, so important. Yes, we've got internal lawyers. Yes, we've got clause 24B32. And those are important because it lets us know how we will handle things going forward if the problem arises. But much, much greater than that is the relationship. And even though people do talk litigation, particularly perhaps in the building industry or other related industries, our relationships must be driven by trust, which is one of our values. It must be delivered with open communication and with respect. And those are far, far more important pillars than the underlying contract, which is, of course, important, but not, in my view, as important.
Yeah, if I add to that briefly, Ali, just to add to what David was saying, you know, we talked earlier about Baptist Care being around for 75 years. I don't think you get that sort of length of running without deep vision and grounded in a strong sense of who we are. And as David's talking about the values, you know, that really is the foundation of who we are. And that goes right to the top of the leadership. So, you know, my observation in this period is that in leadership in an organization like this means, you know, you're making decisions at that level which are commercially sound to have the sort of clauses and contracts and so on, but they're also customer first and employee first. And, you know, when an organization consistently demonstrates this, I think, you know, there's every reason for customers, employees and partners to really trust in that relationship. And that's something I think that's proven and demonstrated over time, and it sort of serves as the foundation of how, you know, you do work through multiple stress points like COVID.
Thank you, Ben. That's great. Well, mission and purpose are important for all companies. And if it's okay with you both, I'd like to talk a little bit about a subject very close to Baptist Care's heart, the Hello Ball. If it's okay, just to give a bit of background for those that are listening, on the 28th of February 2015, Tara Costigan, a mother of three and a Baptist Care employee, was brutally murdered by her ex-partner. Her violent death from domestic violence sent shockwaves through her family, friends, her local community and the Baptist Care workforce. In response to her tragic death, calls for change became the inspiration for Baptist Care's Hope Street's first ever Hello Ball. And every year, the Hello Ball raises vital funds to support Baptist Care's Hope Street essential support services for women and children as they seek to end the cycle of abuse and build safer environment for families. Well, Ben, David, Marketability are a proud sponsor of the 2022 event. It is certainly something that has really touched our entire team's heart, and it's a cause that we are really proud to journey with Baptist Care on. Ben, can you share a little bit about how other organisations and individuals can get behind Baptist Care and this great cause?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ali. And I'll just start by saying we've really valued the support that Marketability have provided. Inaugural, right from the very beginning. I think, we had that support and we've really valued that and that partnership. So, yeah, as you said, Ali, the event is in 2022 due to COVID. We've just moved the event and postponed to May 2002. But, yeah, the new date will be on Friday, the 6th of May. So that's been secured. Tickets can be purchased online for tables or individual tickets or for sponsorship. And that can be found online at haloball.org.au.
Excellent. And look, it really is a fun night, isn't it, David LaRusso?
Fantastic. I think we've been supporting it on the dance floor from the very beginning to your entertainment for next year. Have that been sorted out, Ben?
Yeah, we do have a lineup, so there'll be more revealed and communicated in the coming months.
I think Marsha Hines was a hit for me. She was fantastic. But I also love all the auctions that are available for individuals and organisations to sort of purchase. We had a fantastic day out sailing as a result of the Hello Ball, which was good.
Thank you very much.
Some great prizes to be won.
Well, looking to the future, how do you see the needs of Baptist Care's target retirement living market changing over the next 5 to 10 years?
Retirement living is one of Australia's great untapped markets. We have no problem with demand. The problem is with supply. Did you know, for example, that only 6% of people over 65 even consider moving into a retirement village? So can you imagine if you're a planner, you're sitting there and you've got an untapped market that is many factors bigger than the current market over the coming 10 years. So our growth calculations are mapped out, and we know that there are holes in the market in New South Wales and ACT where we can expand our offering. Not just the current model, but new models. Constantly, the organisation is reviewing better ways to do aged care, and whether those ways revert to single-storey villages or even to vertical villages going up 20 stories with all the support community gathered around the base of those developments. There are many options. Fortunately, Baptist Care has got some very good sites which are coming up for renewal because they've been around 30, 40, 50 years. We've also got some greenfield sites which are coming available. So there are plans going out, believe it or not, for the next 10 to 15 years where Baptist Care will be in the forefront of village developments, not just with the building, but with the support concept that goes with that. And I think maturing Australians are going to be better catered for in the coming 20 years than perhaps they have been in the past 20.
How's Baptist Care adapting to cope with and serve the needs of its clients in the retirement living sector at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think to the point around, what does the future look like? We are seeing an older customer, and naturally that's going to mean, shorter times in the village and more frequent turnover, and therefore, a higher volume of leads will be required. But I think, again, from a Baptist Care sort of perspective and the way we view change and the way we look at that is to say a more senior customer is also potentially a more vulnerable customer at times as well. So there is a consideration in our model around greater care needs and how we provide for that. But really from that groundwork of choice, if we go back to that idea again of what the Baptist Care brand represents for us, it really is about that attitude that we come with. So starting from that place of what's important to the customer and how do we engage with those needs. And so that may be, direct care needs, but it also may be related to social needs and connection. And we know that, a key consideration for our customer and certainly a key part of our value proposition is providing for community and providing for that space for people to come. And it is about beautiful apartments. It is about great design, but it's also about great community. So it's a really important element for us in Baptist Care's retirement living.
There's another element, which is, of course, the financial element, as people start to plan their latter years. And it has been a fairly fixed formula to date. We're pleased to review that constantly, both by looking at what the market is doing, but also talking to our customers and saying, hey, how can we help you get the level of service or care and accommodation that you really can afford? So a flexible approach to financing is very much part of the thinking. Once upon a time, it used to be one size for all, and that is very much changing. So the other facet for us is an increased focus on research. I don't think Baptist Care did a huge amount of research in previous times. One of the things I like to do is to measure expenditure as a ratio of income. And even if you look at our sales and marketing expenditure, it's still not at a high ratio compared to other industries. With research, a similar equation can be calculated. And in terms of how many cents on the dollar we spend talking to our customers, I think we've got room for improvement. We need to do that with our internal expertise, but we also need to do it with external expertise who specialize in these areas. And I've noticed as projects go forward for board approval, more and more of the paper is customer research-based information, not just financial information, not just design information, not just construction information, but customer preference information. And I think that's got to mark the way forward for Baptist Care.
Well, I think Baptist Care was one of the first providers to introduce the financial options. What would you say the response has been to the clients that's been offered in regards to, dial up, dial down?
It's very interesting when you introduce an innovative new thought that you've been part of the creation of, and you think, well, everybody's going to go for that. It's brilliant. Interestingly, the traditional way is still relevant for a lot of people. But what they appreciate is the conversation around flexibility. You can do this, you can do that. You're in charge, which is the way to talk to a baby boomer. You can dial up and dial down and make your decision with your family. And even though they might come back to the traditional, they very much appreciate the process.
And Ben, even in regards to residential aged care, Baptist Care really has led the way, I believe, with this as well in regards to offering some financial incentives for residents moving out of one of their retirement village communities into aged care. Have you found that that's had a really positive impact as well?
Yeah, certainly. I think it carries on with David's point. I'll always reference our GM of strategy who... massive brain, incredible understanding of the financials, and was moving his mother into aged care and got bamboozled by, where do I go? What are the next steps? What does that actually mean? And we joked as a leadership team that, if our leading mind on the finances was also a little bit puzzled by where to go, then, we're certainly working in a pretty complex environment. So it is really around, trying to make it as simple as possible. It is really around providing choice and guiding people. I think that's ultimately what people are looking for. They're looking for someone that they can trust, who can guide them on the journey. It is difficult. It's not easy. And even in our efforts to simplify it, there's still challenges. So it's about coming side by side with people and being able to answer their questions and engage with them, which means you need really good people. And you need really good partners as well, and people who understand the sector, who understand the customer, and who understand the organisation to be able to communicate the way that that customers need us to communicate with them.
Well, Baptist Care's got some huge developments in the pipeline. Can you give us any sort of insight into how you evaluate the designs?
There is a particular development near a particular road, which is called the Epping Road, which is currently going through a process of assessment, master planning for the next 20 to 30 years. That process is so front-end loaded in terms of research, in terms of what the market and the customer want. It's setting absolute records for Baptist Care. It's chaired, there's committees that are chaired by the CEO, there are committees that are board driven, and then there's the executive committees who are spending an incredibly good amount of time working out what best to do. Because the asset exists in terms of land, and the concept is being delivered. At this very moment, 4 of Sydney's best architectural firms have entered a design competition. They're vying for the privilege to create this new multi-purpose, community-based, intergenerational aged care place. And the word place is very deliberate. This is not a facility, it's a place where family, friends, and neighbours will live, children and adults, in a way that perhaps we haven't been able to achieve to date. And it's very, very exciting.
Watch this space.
Coming soon.
Well, is there anything else that maybe I should have asked you that I may not have known enough to ask, or anything else that you'd like to add?
There's one point I would add, and it's always a challenge for a not-for-profit. How do you afford to do everything that you want to do? Because the demands on the dollar are enormous, whether it's extra staff for COVID management, whether it's training, or whether it's marketing and sales. To have a sales force inside an organization, which I have done with many, many companies, is an absolute delight, because you control your message, you control your people, you train them to the degree that you want them to be trained. But to do that inside an aged care organization and a charitable organization with commitments such as Hope Street, such as affordable housing, the dollars are just not there to have a big internal sales force. So I think the role of the contract organization, the external sales force, is going to continue to be in place. But the ability and the key to success is how the two work together. And I take my hat off to marketability. I get into trouble internally sometimes for saying that you guys do a really good job, but you do, because you take time to understand, you take time to communicate, you take time to negotiate and design the package, and then you deliver against the package. And the concept of fee for service is only driven by fee for sales. So if you don't sell anything under these agreements, you guys don't get paid. But we know that you have delivered 100% in every occasion, and therefore you get paid, and you get paid appropriately. And I think that model has still got a lot of legs to it.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you, David. Well, look, it's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed the conversation with you both today, so thank you so much. I know from David, myself, and the rest of the marketability, working with Baptist Care is like working with family, and I don't mean that we're complacent. I mean values are aligned, as you've both talked about. It's just something that we love. We love turning up each day and giving 110%, and we really value the trust that you've put in us. So thank you so much for speaking to us today, and we'll talk to you again soon.
You will, this afternoon at the Sales Marketing.
In about 3 hours.
Thanks, Ben and David, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much for your honesty and what you've said today. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, guys. Good to speak to you.
Good night.